And I've only just heard the foreclosure thing recently in the media, but it tracks with what I'm seeing on the ground. It doesn't seem to me like anybody is changing their lifestyle. Where are they all getting this money?
Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly where they're getting it. They're like running up their credit cards. Hi everybody, I'm Meghan Pelley with All City Real Estate, and my guest today is Toni Altum with WFG Title. We're just going to have a little chat today about all things interesting happening in San Antonio and the real estate market and how it cross-references with the title industry. Toni, if you could tell us a little bit about your background and a little bit about your company.
Okay, thank you. Well, I really appreciate you inviting me to do this.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, absolutely. I have been in the title industry since the late 90s. I was in real estate early on, and then in 99 got into the industry as a sales rep and got into the escrow side of it in 2007. So, and the majority of my career has been with Alamo Title. And just recently, our county manager, Eddie Hall, he left after 35 years and then recruited about 35 of us. And we all went with him to start WFG, Williston Financial Group. And they're out of Portland. And all of our execs, including our owner, were either Fidelity or First American executives.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of experience
Yeah.
there on the executive side.
And so we're our own underwriter, and we're in 49 states. And, you know, we have the motto that not a lot of more corporate-driven title companies have, and it's, you know, God, family, and work.
Well, one of the reasons I like working with you is you understand it from the real estate side, and then you also understand and have a lot of experience on the title end of it.
Yeah.
And you also have you're well known in the area. I mean, you grew up here. I remember there's been a couple of transactions where you've said, oh, I know so-and-so, let me just give them a call.
Yeah.
And then we finally got unstuck from whatever it was we were stuck on. So I think anywhere, but especially in San Antonio, that's kind of the name of the game, right?
Yeah.
Who knows you and you know, and how you can get things going forward when they get a little stuck. So
you never burn bridges, that's for sure.
no, that is for sure. You can't do that.
That's right. And everything makes full circle. So,
Well, speaking of burning bridges, let's talk a little bit about divorce and selling.
okay.
What does escrow need? What is something that everybody needs, or where would the advantage be to getting this information ahead of time in a situation where a couple is splitting up and they're dividing the asset or selling the asset, which is their home?
Well, first and foremost, and you ask us to do this for you as well, and I think it's very important to give us heads up and go ahead and open the order. And that way we've got the commitment there before we actually get a contract, and letting them know that, you know, because it'll be our examiners that actually order a certified copy of the divorce decree, making sure that it is actually final. You know, if it went to where it was really ugly and we dealt only with the attorneys and that we were instructed and sent a letter by the attorney that, you know, nothing is going to be dispersed. It'll go to, you know, an account
Like a trust
for them to take care of that disbursement, which quite honestly, I like that better because, you know, we put it back on them and we don't have anything to do with it. But yeah, I mean, you know, most of the time, you know, they'll communicate with us, but they don't necessarily want to be communicating with each other.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We see it on our end, and you know, everybody's situation is different. We see parties that are pretty collaborative and just want to get to the finish line and move on to the next chapter of their lives. We've seen, you know, the volatility that can come along with it at times. Divorce can, I always tell people when the floor of your life is falling out, you can forget about whatever you thought that person was capable of, because they just don't, you just don't know what what they will and won't do when they feel like everything is crumbling around them. And so you kind of have to be careful and tread lightly and treat everybody completely fairly, because there's two sides to every story, and then there's what actually happens. So yeah, divorces are fun.
And one thing I do want to point out is a lot of attorneys will have the spouse that is not awarded the home do a quit claim deed.
Oh yes.
Yeah,
talk about that.
Texas does not accept them. It's just that when they're not insurable.
They're as useless as the paper they're written on.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are certain times when our underwriters will allow it, but most of the time, if that was the process, and they're not actually, the house is not selling until maybe a year or so down the road after it's been final, and then that pops up on our commitment. Um, we can actually record the section of the divorce decree, the certified copy, in lieu of having, if it was one of those situations where we couldn't get in touch with them, or it's not amicable, um, rather than having them redo and sign just a general warranty deed.
Oh sure, because sometimes people just completely vanish.
Yeah.
That we've had situations where that happened. We had one that was an inheritance and probate sale where the wife, the deceased, had been married, and they never got divorced, and we couldn't find him.
Yeah.
But it was like an abandonment situation because of the length of time that had gone on. So there's all different kinds of, scenarios. Yes. And experience is one of the only ways to kind of circumvent that. Speaking of inheritance and probate sales, we had a wily one, didn't we?
Yes. We found all that out a little later, but yeah.
Yes. So we had a transaction together, and there were probably about 9 heirs. And because of the amount of heirs and where they were and the situation, there was a lot of power of attorneys. So gave a lot of different siblings authorities to sign on behalf of the siblings that weren't going to be there. And we later got a call a couple of years down the line that there was a sibling that no one was very fond of, and they had actually conspired to hire someone with the same name as this sibling, and this person impersonated the sibling that no one cared for, and they took her portion of the proceeds. And I mean, from a title perspective, what are some of the things that you can do to stay ahead of that? What are some of the learning experiences from that?
Well, I mean, in that situation, how do you know?
Right.
And when you're seeing an ID and it matches this person, and you've never met any of them before,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, but what ended up happening on that is, that's why we have title insurance. She was able to file a claim on that situation and get what was supposed to be coming to her. Now, as far as the legal part of it, I don't know what happened in that situation, but
Well, it wasn't a hefty.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of meat on the bone to begin with.
no. But still, that was her option, that she had that to fall back on.
Talk to me like I'm a third grader about title insurance, because I think in the industry, we know what it is, but as we're going through the process with our clients, it's something that I don't think a lot of agents spend a lot of time talking about. What's the purpose of it? How are you regulated? Are you regulated? A little bit about it, and why it almost always has to occur on every transaction, or does it?
Well, I mean, if it comes through a title company, it has to.
Okay.
We cannot do a closing or issue, if they're not going to ask, if they're not paying for a title policy. That's what our business is. And it basically, I mean, a lot of people think that, putting money in escrow with a title company is just like this holding, type of situation, and that's it. But no, I mean, what it is allowing us to do the, the background of the property, however far back, and make sure that there's no clouds, because there could be, a mortgage that was from two sellers back that never had a release of lien. Um, and we have to do a lot of detective work. Um, and there could be, whether or not it's a newer home, you know, um, because it's 2 weeks behind always when something is filed and when it shows up. Um, and so that's why we always do a bring the date at the very end, because anything that could have shown up in those 2 weeks prior would pop up again
I see.
before we go to closing. But you see liens from contractors and their subs, and whether or not they were paid, or it could be any Tom, Dick, or Harry. A painter that got pissed off because he didn't get paid what he should have, and put some lien on there. And unfortunately, you know, it's difficult, and because that person has to be the one to sign the release, or the seller has to take it to court,
Mm-hmm.
which can be very costly.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what it boils down to is making sure that when we close that transaction and we are passing ownership on to the new buyer, that title is free and clear. So, with the insurance policy, if something were to pop up that wasn't there before, something that was missed, that's where a claim comes into play, and your title insurance will take care of that for you.
They're saying that in San Antonio that the foreclosure rates are up quite a bit. What do you think that means in our market? What are you seeing on the title side?
Well, honestly, I have not actually closed very many of foreclosures. I've had a few where they were almost there and got it listed and under contract before it actually got to the foreclosure point.
Did it end up being a short sale then?
It wasn't a short sale.
Okay.
It even, was one of those that, missed that cutoff as well.
Oh, great.
But we did deal, as far as payoff, we did deal with the mortgage company's attorney and not ordering payoffs or whatever from that actual mortgage company that had the loan.
Okay.
So, and I've done a couple of assumptions. So,
Those
yeah.
have been kind of elusive on my end. I see them all over the MLS right now. I'm hearing different things.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense that it could be a longer process because why would the bank be motivated to re-lend that money at 2.5%, 3.5% interest when they could reinvest that money in 6%? But then I had heard that there was some rules that had changed where they were required to give you an answer one way or the other on the assumption within,
Well,
say, 30 days.
I think a lot of it has to do with the actual bank that has the loan, and how prepared that department is. And the one that I closed recently was Loan Care, and they made it very easy.
Really?
Yep.
To be continued there. I do get a lot of people that ask me about foreclosures, what the difference is, and there's not a huge difference, I don't feel like, on our end. Not by the time it hits the market. Like, foreclosure is not a foreclosure is not a foreclosure. Once you see one version of a foreclosure, you've only seen one version. Do you hear a reoccurrence of, gosh, I wish I would have known this sooner? Things that you hear over and over from clients that maybe we can try to help the audience get a better perspective. I feel like a lot of people that watch podcasts are very knowledge seeking, and the woulda, coulda, shoulda,
Yeah.
or the reoccurring, gosh, I wish I would have had this all figured out. I
Yeah.
wish somebody would have told me ahead of time. What do you see there in your camp?
A lot of times, like on the mortgage side, you'll see where buyers, they didn't know, the cost, of what it might be, thought it wouldn't be as expensive. Um, but from the title perspective, um, you know, if you're dealing with, like I said, an estate or sometimes a divorce, but almost always, when there's dead people
Yeah.
involved, and then there's a lot of heirs, and locating and making sure that they're all on the same page. Because if one person says no, it's a dead deal. So those type of things. So again, um, getting the order open and making sure that whoever is the point person gets us all of the information that we need. If it's, if it's going to be probated, in the process of being probated, there's certain things that we're going to ask for. The main thing is, the letter of testamentary. That is the one thing that the court does, allowing that person to act as the executor or the executrix of that estate. If you don't have that letter of testamentary, you don't have the authority.
No, I
So-
was recently named the executrix of my brother's estate, and it felt like without his death certificate, I could do nothing. And with it, he died in a different state, so they call it letters of office there, but it's the same thing, letters of testimony here. I could do nothing.
Yeah.
I was just a paper tiger.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes a little while to get that going.
Yeah. And a lot of times, if someone doesn't want to go that route, they want to try to make things a little cheaper, and then they do end up doing a monument of title. They're no longer the executive of the estate,
Oh,
because
so what
the
does that
monument
mean?
of title puts all the heirs in title.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So that
You're
would
bypassing all of that.
that would be something that happens, say, if there was no will.
Well, no. Yes. If there's no will, then they would do affidavits of heirship. If there's a will and they don't want to pay for the whole probate process, the time frame, just depending on your attorney, the judge, all of that. Sometimes it could take, 3 to 4 months, just depending. So they want to bypass that. So, a lot of times their attorney might say, well, then do a monument of title, and then whoever is named in the will as the heirs for that property will become the owners of that property. So all their names will be listed on the tax cert,
Oh, it's
So-
almost like a ladybird deed then. Like
Yeah.
as soon as the party dies,
Yeah.
the title automatically rolls.
But
within
there's not a deed. It's the monument of title.
Okay.
So they go by the actual will. So that's behind the actual order, the monument of title order.
And what if there's no will?
So if there's no will, they have to do affidavits of heirship.
Okay. And some of that information is not easy to acquire.
True.
We did an affidavit of heirship that was a little tricky because the witnesses need to know the deceased for how long? Is it 30 years? 10 years. Okay.
At least.
And they cannot be
Minimum.
related. They have to be like close.
They can be related, but they cannot be receiving any interest in the home.
Okay.
Like they could be a cousin, or an aunt or uncle. That is that's allowable. It's just, what it boils down, what we call is two disinterested parties.
Okay.
So it is one family member and two disinterested parties that can attest to the marriage, the children, every aspect of.
It's very specific too.
Yes.
The dates of birth, including the year.
Yep.
The dates of marriage, the dates of divorce, the dates of
Children.
death,
Death.
if there's anybody else who's died.
Yep. And then, if you've got any of the heirs that are no longer alive, do they have children?
Right.
So, yeah, we don't like those.
We had a situation once like that where we put the sign out in the yard and got a call from the sign, and they said, "Oh, well, I'm I'm related to the deceased. And so it was a husband and wife. The husband had passed away. The wife was quite elderly, and all of this money from this house, it was not a very expensive asset, was going to be for the remainder of her life. And she had 2 children. So I get a phone call from somebody on the sign, and he said, well, we're entitled to a portion of that estate because my dad was married to her. And I said, oh, okay. Well, do you have an affidavit of heirship? And he said, I do. I said, okay, can you send it to me? So he did. So I called her son and I said, do you have siblings besides the one I'm aware of? And he said, no. And I said, well, I got a phone call and I have this affidavit of heirship and it looks complete. So can you talk to me more about that? And he said, that is my dad. Those are my dad's kids from a previous something. And my dad was very clear that he did not want any of them to have anything from, after he died. And I said, well, did your dad die with a will?
Yeah.
And he said, no. I said, well, this is the problem that we have here. Because they have this affidavit of heirship recorded. Where did they get all of this information? And he said they were at a family function and he had done like a family tree, and his half brother said, oh, that's really interesting, brother. Do you mind if I hang on to it after this barbecue or whatever? And just like, thumb through it at my leisure. And so he said, of course, no problem. Thanks for taking an interest in it. So he took all the information from that little family tree and created and executed an affidavit of heirship. So then
With 2 people that knew
there were now it went from her getting his half. If you think of an estate as a circle and she owned half and he owned half, upon his death, she would have received his half of the circle. Now it became his half of the circle was split up. It would have been 4 ways. And then there was a sibling that was deceased that had children. So I think it ended up getting split up like 6 separate ways. So what would have been less than $100,000 for this very elderly woman was now shrinking to, a very nominal amount. Like maybe she would have gotten 10 grand or something.
Yeah. So she had her half, she gets half of his half, and the other half is split
amongst all these people.
If he had children from prior other marriages or other relationships. Yeah.
So I said to the brother, I said, I understand your dad didn't have a will. Is there any documentation anywhere where your dad wrote down what he wanted? Because what he was saying to me was very specific. My dad never wanted that. And he said kind of passively, he said, oh yeah, my dad was super paranoid. Every time he went into the hospital, he thought he was going to die. And so he would write down what he wanted. And I'm like, he wrote it down. Yes. And he's like, yeah, I have like 5 of them. I said, send me all of them. So those are holographic wills. They are valid in the state of Texas. I am not an attorney. You should consult with your attorney. And we consulted with an attorney, and we were within the 2-week window to open probate. That window was closing. And so we opened probate. And at the end of this very long story, that sweet little old lady got her entire proceeds. But the whole time, those siblings were banging on our door, wanting information. And I'm like, I can't give you any information that my client does not give me the authority to provide you. And she wrote in her own hand for me not to speak to anybody. So I'm sorry, I can't help you. But you'd be surprised how creative people get when they think there's even just a little bit of money to be had.
Absolutely, yeah. And kudos to you for doing that, because most agents don't dive that deep. You've got to ask the questions. That's what helps us as the title company, is having a lot of these answers to a lot of these questions already done, which, sometimes delays the process of the closing. So
thankfully that lender was going to delay the closing anyway.
Yeah.
Not all lenders are created equal.
But what you did is a lot of stuff that we do, the detective work. of really just kind of breaking it all down and getting it, you know, um, all out on big, dust so we can figure out who's who and so on and so forth. So, but yeah, it does make it easier and it'll go by quicker if a lot of that is done ahead of time.
You are regulated.
Yeah.
And so there's only so much assistance you can offer without somebody potentially slapping your hand, right? And so it used to be, it wasn't the title company's job to receive the option money.
Right.
And now they've made that change, which just was, thank you so much for like taking option money. We used to have to drive around and deliver checks. It was
Yeah.
like the most antiquated thing in the entire world. And it was really a white knuckle situation. And then you had to rely on the other agent or their client
Right.
signing off on it. And there was like this, like, giant inhalation of hopium that they would actually sign off on it. It was real, like butt clutching, not fun. I didn't like it at all. Anyway, so now when the earnest money gets dispersed, so does the option money. It all goes to title. Title will release it if the buyer backs out during the option period. And these are all like state-driven words. So if all what I'm saying is blah, 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 just hit me up in the comments and I'll fill you in on what that might mean in your area. But ordering the survey, getting quotes for the survey, ordering the HOA documents, all of these things have to happen in a sequential order and need to happen within the timeline specified in the contract. We've seen it where like there was this little attempted uptick of buyers representing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what maybe some of them failed to realize is that there are a lot of date sensitive hurdles in the transaction. And unless you want to push a bunch of money out of the gate for services that may or may not be warranted because another party hasn't decided if they're going forward, you have to time it like you're jumping in a double dutch game.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do it in a timely manner, you could step outside the confines of the contract, and that gives the other party an option to back out and get their earnest money back. And it's just not ideal. That's not what we're all trying to do. So title, what is your role with respect to surveys, HOA certificates? What isn't your role? What is a favor? What should agents or just people in a transaction know about these things?
Well, they're all favors. They're all as a courtesy.
Okay.
Because title is an unbiased third party.
That's right. Your job
Yeah.
is to uphold the sanctity of the contract the way it is written,
That's
regardless
exactly right.
of who gave you the business,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, because the contract is between the buyer and the seller. And, whether the buyer and the seller have an agent that represents them, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Um, and, even, with FSBOs and stuff like that.
Of
So,
course, by owner.
we are happy to help. We um, reach out to 3 or 4 survey companies, ask for a quote. We then in turn send all those quotes to the person that's going to be ordering the survey and have them choose, who they would like to go with and order from. It's a courtesy that we provide if we're asked to order the HOA. We send the payment link to the seller or whoever is on the contract that would be paying for that, um, and for them to make that payment through that payment link. It's really important that we have all of the contact information on the contract for the buyer and seller. If either one of the agents don't want to put that in a separate email, they could send it to us with that information. So when we're opening up the order, we have it all. And that way, the process of, contract to close, um, they're tapped in throughout the entire process. One thing that I wanted to bring up that is happening in March is the change in the guideline for the FinCEN.
Oh,
Yes.
talk about that.
So it used to be if it is a cash transaction and the buyer is using their entity,
Like an LLC or, okay.
So anything over 350, you know, they have to fill out, and we send in the information as to whether or not, you know, that situation, would require the documentation for that falls under the FinCEN. All of that's changed.
Uh-huh.
So there is no, it can be cash, or it can be a hard money. It has no limit now. It can be 10,000, whatever.
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
it says, the 350 doesn't apply anymore.
Okay.
So it would be all transactions. The only ones that it does not apply to is, if the LLC is going to be using a conventional lender, it'll be a conventional type loan.
Okay.
Yeah. And that does not apply. So, and then it will also involve the seller, not just the buyer using the LLC. So, including trusts as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, there'll be a lot of information starting and going out, but one of our new actions as part of our order entry is whether or not it qualifies for the FinCEN. And if it does, then all of this information is going to be sent out to either the buyer, the seller, whoever that it falls on. And we're going to need that information. So we need them to understand, to be very cooperative, because that would be another reason that something would get delayed if we didn't get the information that we needed, because it has really gotten very, very strict. So,
do you see a future? I mean, obviously, there's no crystal ball on the table, but do you foresee right now there's a threshold for couple sales over 500,000 and single person sales over 200?
are you talking about for capital gain?
For capital gains?
Yeah.
Do you see that changing? I mean,
Our form hasn't changed, and the IRS is the one that makes the form. But
I mean, that's applicable across the United States.
Yeah.
There's markets that you couldn't touch a property for less than $500,000.
Yeah, because the majority, as the price point goes up, it
seems like an antiquated number.
Yeah. So I don't know. No one has told me whether or not they're thinking about making that change. But where it stands right now, it's still there. I always say to the sellers, please make sure that you have a good, tax guy.
Good CPA.
Yeah. So,
We do.
and they will,
You might see them on a future podcast.
so they'll be able to help them, because, you do pull in, all the money you spend on the home, regardless of whether or not, you had the opportunity to pay it off, or your payoff was low and your proceeds, were over that amount, because that's really the bottom line. But the way it's written, sale or exchange of 250 or less, or 500,000 or less, as a married couple. So, but yeah, I mean, there's ways to get around all of that if you have a good CPA.
It feels like everybody's kind of coming out of hibernation. They're accepting what's normal now. They're accepting, we are seeing some changes depending on where you're at. In one of the last podcasts, we talked about how market conditions can be very much like weather. It could be raining on one side of town and sunny on the other. And so it's really hard to give a blanket statement. Somebody called me yesterday and he said, well, I'm calling because Zillow says my house is worth whatever, and I found you on realtor.com and you said my house is worth $80,000 more, so I like that, so I called you. And I was like, yeah, so and he was in another state. I was like, okay, so none of that has anything to do with anything. Well, we had a really nice chat anyway.
Yeah.
And I'll find him a kick-ass realtor in his state. But
That's funny.
anyway, do you remember what you were doing 10 years ago in 2016?
Yeah, I was running First Western Title.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't remember what I was doing. I had a 1-year-old and I literally don't remember anything about 2016. I just remember not sleeping.
Yeah. I had my first grandchild in May of 2016 and running, a title company.
Yeah. I do remember at one point thinking to myself, I don't think I should be operating a motor vehicle right now. Like, I am so tired.
Yeah.
But anyway, it all comes out in the wash. Biggest lesson in the last 10 years?
Listen more, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good communication.
Mm-hmm.
That's honestly, I think that's the key to most everything.
Sure. Good communication, good documentation, coming from a place of curiosity, not judgment. I would say that's been a big one for me in the last 10 years, like just asking why.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, so I have a great team. My assistant, James O'Neill, has been with me since 2021, and really, really proud of him and his growth, and he's a great detective. I'll put it that way. And he enjoys that side of it too. Yeah. So excited to be with WFG. We're having our grand opening February 17th from 4 to 6:30 at our new office at the corner of Sonterra and Sigma, 800 East Sonterra.
It's New Orleans themed, right?
It is, yeah. Mardi Gras, yeah. So you don't have to dress that way.
Topless realtors running
No.
down.
Oh, God. Yeah, but it'll be fun. Yeah, David Klein, who's one of my good customers as well.
David's cool. I've worked with him. He's very detail
He
oriented.
he's got a jazz band.
Oh, that's right.
And he's going to be playing at our party, which we're very excited about.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it'll be a nice time. Yeah. So put it on your calendars. We'd love to see you.
Yes, we'll be there. If you have any questions about anything we talked about today or want more information, we would love to see those comments in the chat. And stay tuned for next week. And thank you, Toni, so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it as well. My first one.
Yeah. One of many.
Yes. Thank you.